Hello, Ryan here, and welcome to Star Citizen Sunday. This is a weekly show which covers all of the news from the week just past. Be sure to subscribe if you like what you see, and let's get on with it. This week, CIG are still battling to get players into Alpha 3.18. We hear more regarding engineering gameplay, plus we learn about the new system for missions that is now in use. So this week's Inside Star Citizen began with Jared addressing the issues with CIG trying to get 3.18 in a working order, offering a public apology to how rough it has been for many still unable to get into the persistent universe. Now I know they are working on a 3.18.1 hotfix patch that will hopefully get the patch smoothed out enough to allow everyone in and playing, and they have been addressing the issues since launch, but there are still many people getting that dreaded 19,000 issue and other issues, so I really hope that this patch fixes it all for everyone, because it must be dreadful not being able to play. Anyway, this week's episode of Inside Star Citizen took a look at the modular mission system, which is what CIG are now using to build out all of the persistent universe missions. This new system allows any designer in any studio to create a mission in a matter of days, while keeping everything consistent and as bug-free as possible, or at least if there is a bug, being able to find it and fix it much easier. Now this means that with any mission type, be that delivery, assassination, so on and so forth, they can have a base mission type and then plug in as many different modules or sub-modules that they want to, which will change the mission up in various ways, like locations, objectives, and so on. So no two missions should be exactly the same. Right now, they are working on resource collection missions, which include salvage and mining missions, and they will also be adding the classic mission, like an NPC requesting, say, 40 pieces of wheat, for example, and then you have to go and find that and bring it back to them, which is actually music to my ears, because for quite a while now I've been wanting these types of very basic missions, and when we get things like more settlements, full of random NPCs, they could all request different items, be that a particular component for their ship or vehicle, maybe 10 Heart of the Woods mushrooms. That for me would be great fun, just heading out trying to find them based on where you know they grow, and then delivering it to the NPC for payment or trade or access to something else. Now there are many new missions in the works, including salvaging missions, and they say in its simplest state, you could get a contract given by a company that have salvaging rights to a particular wreck. Now, you get given the location of that piece of salvage, and then when you arrive, there could be another NPC there salvaging already, or a player who has accepted the illegal salvage mission, where they have to go to the same wreck, but salvage as much of that wreck before you arrive, at which point it could end up in you taking that illegal salvager on, them fleeing, or having NPCs to come in and fight. Now, I really like the idea of having these wrecks offered for both sides, just to create that run-in, that kind of emergent gameplay, but it was also mentioned in the description for both the legal and illegal salvage missions that NPCs will be there to protect you and your right to mine, or fight you if you are there illegally. And as they say here, it could spawn waves of ships to either protect or fight for you, so quite the change up to the traditional mission route. There is also a module called Chicken Ship, which is where an NPC will be present or show up after you've arrived, and if you scare them off or kill them, then it could lead to more ships showing up, like a bomber or unfighters, maybe a carrack to rescue the dead body, or maybe nothing. The designers will come up with many more possible outcomes for all missions, so there is a lot to do. Now I find this very interesting with how it works, and part of me is very much, I would just like to salvage the fair game salvage that I paid the rights to get, without having to fend off other salvagers. But then the other part of me thinks the potential for all this will be so much fun, but not all the time. So I love how much variety there will be, and how you will just never know what will happen, but sometimes you do just want to chill and salvage. But then I feel that with persistent entity streaming, I'm sure that there will be an absolute ton of potential salvage available all over the place, but it'll be very interesting to see where this goes, and I feel the intention from CIG here is not to have every salvaging opportunity involving a fight, more just the potential that that sort of stuff could happen. Now, another mission type that they are working on is called Package Extraction, which uses these Crusader platforms that they used for the Ninetales lockdown, and basically the Ninetales gang have some valuable Crusader components, and Crusader want them back. So the mission requires players to go there and get this stuff back and deliver it to wherever. And this mission can be accepted by many players at once before the Ninetales leave. So again, working together with other groups of players to take on the Ninetales like we see with the Ninetales Lockdown, but this is not a dynamic event. Now, one thing that they have been working on is hooking up the mission modules together. So for example, you might take on a bounty hunting mission, and then once you take out that bounty, it could then add that bounty's ship as a salvaging mission, so you can harvest their ship afterwards. Now, in regards to mining, these missions are currently on hold, unfortunately, while they wait for resources from other teams, but they are still continuing to develop mining, salvaging, and crafting missions as well once that comes online, plus all manner of resource collection missions. So do expect a vast array of all mission types in the future that should come thick and fast from all the designers throughout the company. As mentioned before, this system allows any designer from any studio throughout the world the ability to easily and very quickly piece together a custom mission of their choosing, and for us, the player, that means that we will see a massive expansion of new missions going forwards. An example they gave, which kind of ties into this hooking up the mission modules together, is you could go to a location to do an eliminate all. When you arrive at that location, there could be a bounty in the sky that you have to take out. Then once you enter the bunker and take out all the targets, there could be a jump town item dispenser there that spawns an item that would then start a delivery mission for you, and then so on and so forth. So quite the interesting system, this mission module system, for expanding on missions for, I believe, 3.19 and beyond. It sounds like there will be no end to what we can be getting on with, and even having to react on the fly as the situation changes, deciding whether we want to take part at each stage or just leave and finish. For me though, with 3.18 bringing persistent entity streaming, and how many more game mechanics are either newly coming online or being fleshed out further, like medical, refueling, repair, mining, salvaging, and soon towing and rescuing disabled ships, taking on a mission for me is more akin to just putting pen to paper, that difficult step of deciding what to do first. It gives me something to get on with while I wait for the actions of players to create more interesting gameplay, so opening up that huge potential that Star Citizen is offering more and more as the game develops, reacting to what players are doing either passively or actively. For example, I might be on the way to pick up a box, and then on the way, or once I arrive there, I might see a ship with cargo everywhere. I could steal and sell that cargo, as I have done in the video linked below. I could salvage the ship, or I could try and find the owner and return it to them. Or reacting to players actively, they could request a repair or a tow or even some food, and you can directly respond to them. Now, the content in the Persistent universe is slowly starting to ramp up in all areas, like player-driven missions, which was always one of CIG's main contributors to missions, but also missions created by CIG. And with this new system, the speed at which these missions will be coming along will be huge, and I do feel that soon there will just be no end to what we can get up to in the burst. Anyway, that was Inside Star Citizen. Quite a great insight into this new system, but let us move on to Star Citizen Live. So this week's Star Citizen Live began with a Q&A with one of these system designers talking further about the engineering gameplay, which we saw on a recent Journey to 4.0 video. Now, the first question was, will we be forced to be an engineer micromanaging all of our ships? And he says no, unless that is what you want. The choice is yours. You can have absolute full control over your whole ship and all of its items if that is what you want to do, but not if you don't want to. If you only want to jump in for say an hour or longer and not have to mess with your ship systems at all, then you won't be forced to do so. You won't need to do all the prep or the post-prep or the maintenance. Think of it like owning a car today. Your car or your ship will run as expected, but eventually something might need fixing, which you can do yourself if you know how to, or you could take it to a station or a mechanic, pay a fee and have someone else do it for you. But if you have a passion for engineering in Star Citizen, then you can learn how to push all the right buttons and know exactly what to do to make your ships even better. And this actually applies to everything in Star Citizen. Every mechanic or career path, be that mining, salvaging, engineering, bounty hunting, it is going to be quite easy to get into, but difficult to master. So for those who really want to spend the time learning, you can get better and better and know exactly what you need to do in every situation. But if you just want to casually play the game and take part in those careers, then you can. Now, he says the main goal for engineering is that players' decisions matter. Even if that decision is, I don't want to spend my time repairing my ship, then that is fine. But you will then obviously have to pay the money for someone else to do that. Be that a player or an NPC, there will be more locations than what we have now to take your ship to and get it repaired, or even call in a beacon for an NPC or player to come to you and fix your ship without you even needing to get your hands dirty. Now, this engineering system will be heavily applicable when the physical damage and physical components are implemented, and there will be a difference between having an engineer on board, running around fixing things, min-maxing things as and when needed, versus someone on their own having to make a decision about when to get out of there if their items are running at critical. So it would be beneficial to have an engineer, but not necessary. They are also thinking about allowing players to repair their ships from a soft death state to a flyable state while they continue to work on other systems. So early doors, we may see the ability for us to technically laser beam things in our ship to get them repaired again, while we wait for things like the physical damage and components, which would be a cool sort of step in the right direction. Next question, can a player be all 3 engineering roles? So if you remember back to the video, there was a technician or a tuner, a mechanic, and a manager. And they say yes, it is all based on your skill and knowledge. If you have enough knowledge of what to do in all 3 roles, then you will be able to perform for each. And many players will wind up being all 3, tuning their ship before they head out, managing the systems while they're out and about, and then having to fix things as and when they go wrong. So the more you know, especially about your ship, because each ship will require different tuning and different components, then the more performance you can get out of it. Now, the next question is, on average, how often will stuff malfunction, if we are just generally flying around? Now, he says that if you're flying a stock ship and you are using it for general use, it will run down far less than travelling longer distances, perhaps, but he does expect that on average, it'll likely be around once a month, maybe once a week, depending on what you're doing, that something may malfunction. But there are a lot of variables to this, and this is of course heavily affected by whether you've tuned it, the location you're in, if the environment is affecting it, how old the item is, how hard you've been pushing it. But we will also have the option to underpower our ships, which will reduce the chance of malfunctions. And for example, if you're exploring the vastness of space in a Carrack, you could tune the majority of your components to run at a sort of low performance rate, which will degrade less and lead to much less malfunctions over time. They are still figuring out if it is based on distance travelled or time spent. He is more akin to distance travelled, which to me makes the most sense, considering this is what determines whether something is active or not. But I think it should be both. If you've had something sitting in a ship for years and it's not been used, then there could be a malfunction. But obviously the more you use something, the more it will degrade. So the more it would make sense that that needs fixing after a certain amount of use. Now, he did also say that it won't be every 10 minutes, and things will be subject to further tuning and balancing as the game develops. So I would imagine that once it comes in for the first time, it might seem a little overkill while they're testing malfunctions, but it will be tuned back to make more sense in terms of how often it happens. Next question is, what size of ship is going to really require an engineer? Now, he doesn't go into specific numbers, as it really is based on the player's decision at the time, based on their own needs individually. But for ships like an Aurora, you will technically be the engineer, or you will pay someone to do it for you. For the Cutlass, it could be the same again, although having a second person fixing things will be helpful, but not vital. But then for a Carrack, it would be recommended to have maybe a couple of engineers, one manager, maybe a mechanic and a technician. Again, these are not 100% exactly how you should do it. It is a personal choice, and eventually you will be able to hire NPCs to do this for you, not just have players. If you want to handle it all yourself, then you can. Next question, how does engineering interact with repair? Now, he says repair will evolve much more post-engineering launch, so once we have all this engineering gameplay, repair will naturally expand from there, but in the early days, it will still require some repair. To begin with, it might just involve changing items, fuses, or maybe using a repair beam to bring items' health back up, or maybe fixing the hull as we can today. But it will evolve to having dedicated repair types for each malfunction and issue, bringing back the item to its full working state. And it was mentioned a while ago, in regards to everything now being beams, that is just for the sake of the alpha, getting that gameplay functionality into the PU with plans to evolve beyond beam gameplay in the future. So do expect more tactile hands-on interactions with all the systems later on, which is likely awaiting this player-machine physical interaction tech that is on the progress tracker, and coming to completion hopefully by the end of this month it seems. But this will allow for player characters to physically reach out and interact with items in the verse, be that weapons, dashboards, items, buttons and controls. So that should enable them to hook up tactile interactions with items to repair them perhaps, and not just shooting a beam at them. Next question is, can someone sneak into a ship or onboard someone else's ship and sabotage the ship itself? And they say yes, that is certainly part of the plan, allowing players to sabotage other ships either physically by shooting it, punching it, damaging it, but this will also tie into the hacking gameplay where players can use devices to hook into an item and then get access to the systems and control the states of all the items in there. He goes on to say that you could hook into a power plant, but ignore that item and then progress from node to node inside that ship, as you can see all of the connected items making your way to whatever item it is that you want to get control of, essentially venting a room of oxygen, turning off life support, turning off shields, opening doors and so forth, which is very cool. And on that note, Jared did mention that many of you may remember that the hacking mechanic was on the roadmap, but a developer had a great idea on how to expand the system even further, so it was pushed back, and they now know the time and place that they will like to reintroduce this, so do expect to see hacking gameplay in the future. Now, the next question was to do with flamethrowers. Are we getting flamethrowers? And he says, no, this was a joke. The video showed a Devastator shotgun with a flamethrower, the same for the blowtorch. But it was said in the past that flamethrowers are certainly something they do want, so I would certainly expect them one day. Will there be exploding toilets? And he says yes, they are on the list now, and I don't know if he's being serious or not, so we will see what happens there. But that was it for the engineering segment. A great follow-up on the Journey to 4.0 video that we saw, and something that I am very interested in pursuing. Plus a very little update about hacking. Nice to hear that that is still on the cards, or not that I ever doubted it wasn't, just that it's evolving. Hopefully that cleared up a few concerns many had regarding engineering, especially for those not interested in taking part in the engineering systems, knowing that you don't have to, you can still play the game and enjoy it, but for those who want to delve into it, you can do that also. Now, for the second half of Star Citizen Live, it was with someone who you may all know pretty well, as this lady lent her voice to a few of the characters in the verse, like Officer Dooley, which is the advocacy agent who recruits citizens to fight against the Xeno threat, but also now a character in Squadron 42. So a great interview, and if you are interested in watching it and learning more about Anna, then by all means do follow the link in the description below if you would like to watch it for yourselves. But that was Star Citizen Live, let us move on. So also this week, the 300 series Whiteley Guide lore post was released, plus Stellar Fortuna kicked off on the 15th, which is the inverse St. Patrick's Day, offering a screenshot competition and some more ship sales. All the links can be found below. So that brings us to the end of the show. If you do enjoy my content, please consider subscribing and hitting that like button. Also, I am able to do this thanks to my very generous patrons and channel members. If you appreciate what I do and would like to help make it even better from as little as $1 a month, all of the links are provided below.